You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code Diehards, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter at Justin Lonero, along with my co-host, as always, Bob Harris, Twitter at footballdiehard.com. Well, that's not his Twitter handle, but that's the website we work for.
Yeah.
Executive producer is on the line this evening, Kyle Dvorchak at FF Kyle the Kid. Bob Harris, what's up?
Let me tell you, that footballdiehards.com thing, it's convenient you brought it up because we do have a ton of content going up. We got our premium content as you're heading into drafts. We'll have premium content throughout the course of the regular season. And if you go sign up right now, use the promo code Diehards to get a discount on an already incredibly priced product. And you'll be happy you did.
Absolutely. Bob, how long have you been with Football Diehards? How long has it been?
It's been since the mid-90s, 1996-ish or so. So I started in the business in 1993 and started working for Fantasy Sports Publications, which is the company that runs all this in probably a couple years after that. And then I think it finally went to full-time in 98. So it's been a while.
It's a beautiful thing. Kyle, what's up?
I've been doing this longer than I've been alive. Like, not even particularly close either.
Which is shocking because you, again, look like you're 10 as opposed to like anywhere near 25. So
yeah, if you looked at me, you'd be like, oh, well, yeah, he's been doing it for like 8-9 years. But no,
exactly,
you've been doing it for like over 20 years.
Yeah. 25 years, young man.
Oh, that's significantly long. Like my family members, my parents had not even had their first kid yet. And then you were somewhere, I'd assume just scribbling on pen and paper and sending off smoke signals.
Been playing the fantasy football itself since the year of our Lord 1986. So 32 years of playing the game. So it's been a good time.
Well, I was 4 in 1986. I'm 36. Well, okay, they say if you do what you love, then you never work a day in your life. I think that's a testament to what you do, Bob. I'd say
play.
They say if it's August 28th, we've got preseason week 3 to take down.
Mm-hmm.
Justin, I'll let you take the lead on this one. Give me your 2 takeaways from preseason.
Oh, boy, Kyle. Well, Josh Allen it's not his job. He looked good. That fade, that went away real quick. I think the three of us can agree that he was going to struggle. That's just what happens. It's a bad Buffalo offense, and he's going to have his hands cut out. So that's what I take away from that situation, which is not that interesting. Another thing I take away is the fact that Marqise Lee got hurt. So we have talked about the wide receiver court with the Jaguars, and I think it kind of cuts things down as in terms of making decisions from a fantasy standpoint. No Lee, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Dante Moncrief? Is it going to be Keelan Cole? I tend to lean Cole. But things are heating up, gentlemen, and I'm excited to talk to you guys tonight. And obviously we're awaiting week 1, and in the next couple of weeks we'll be talking about DraftKings prices.
Bob, what's your take on the Marqise Lee injury? Who do you think stands to benefit from that the most? And then who are your 2 takeaways, or what are your?
There's 3 guys that are in line to benefit, and obviously I think Keelan Cole is obviously the guy to me, as well as Justin looks like the guy that would maybe take the leading role, maybe get the most targets. I would not overlook Dante Moncrief, the 1-year rental, expensive rental, $9 million this year. He probably, of the guys that are veterans, has the skill set most resembling, have another chip there, Justin, most resembling, or are they ho-hos today? Are we back in the ho-hos, Justin?
No, I'm not eating.
Okay.
I'm not eating. I'm not eating this evening.
I can tell.
You're just eating your microphone. Go ahead, Bob.
But Moncrief has a skill set that most resembles Allen Robinson's. I think DJ Chark, we're maybe getting too far in front. Dede Westbrook is a guy that's very intriguing. All offseason, what you heard from team officials behind the scenes was he really needs to pick up the pace. Sounds like he's had a great camp. He's in the mix as well. General takeaways, again, August becomes increasingly meaningless. That's the biggest takeaway. I mean, we used to get that full week 3 preseason dress rehearsal game planned into the third quarter. Not everyone's on board with that anymore, So, and I think we'll see less of it. I think, Sean McVay put it best. It's a fine line, between worrying about getting guys injured, and if someone, look, anyone can get injured at any time. It's kind of better when it happens, if it's going to happen, when the game counts. It's got to be very frustrating for an NFL coach to lose guys in a meaningless game where you're doing the same thing you're doing in practice, except in a less controlled environment. And so Matt Nagy said, he held his starters out. And basically he said those 25 or 30 snaps aren't going to make or break this offense. The 1,000+ snaps we did throughout the course of the summer are what's going to make or break this offense. And so I agree with that. The NFL is going to have to figure out how to work this. It's hard to sell tickets to meaningless games, especially when, everyone's acknowledging they're meaningless. I think that's the biggest takeaway for me is the playing time of players. It is the lack of using players.
Yeah, I got to say this preseason, it's been good. I don't mean to say that, we're judging each offseason on how many players get hurt, but we've lost, a sleeper tight end at the beginning of the preseason or beginning of the offseason workouts in Hunter Henry, Darius Geis, rookie running back, and Marqise Lee. Not star names. I don't mean to, judge their human qualities based on how good they are at football, but thankful that we haven't had many major injuries. But the biggest one, like I said, Darius Geis, brings us to Washington of the NFC East breakdown. Do you think Chris Thompson sees an increased workload, and are there any other running backs to own in this backfield, or is it the sea of mediocrity all in one Washington town? Bob, go ahead.
It's all those things. Look, we're hoping I have this feeling that Chris Thompson was sandbagging a little bit a couple weeks ago. He said, well, I might not be 100% till November. It sounds like he's pretty damn close to, being ready to contribute. Maybe it will take him all that way to get to truly 100%, but if he's 95, 96, 97%, I think we're going to be okay with that. Again, this is one of those situations, we've talked about it with so many teams, where the early down hammer roll looks like it could be divided. Yes, we're all very excited by Adrian Peterson's arrival. And yes, he had 11 carries for 55 yards or 56 yards. Very impressive. I will remind you that he showed up in Arizona and lit up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 5.2 yards a carry, similar to what he was getting in this exhibition game. Was followed by games of 1.9 yards a carry, 4.3, 1.4, 1.9, 4.0. I think that's what he is. He's a guy that can get by. Not sure they have the offensive line to truly spring him out each and every game, and that he's ready to hold up to the workload. So we may see some Robert Kelly at some point. We may see some Samaje Perine. We'll see some of him this week for sure. So, I'm not sold on that early down role just yet. And so if I'm investing in this rushing attack, and it's going to be Thompson, and a lot of that is his receiving ability too, especially in PPR, he stands out even more.
Justin, open up the page. I believe it is 250 of your Chris Thompson Bible. I know you've got one on hand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, even prior to the Geis injury, Thompson, if you looked at what he did last season, it was incredible. I mean, he would have been, if he stayed healthy, I think he could have finished top 12. Honestly, I mean, that's how hot Chris Thompson was. Has had some injuries, but like Bob said, in PPR formats, I think he's a back that can catch 60, 65 passes. We know Alex Smith has a tendency to lean on his running backs in the passing game. This is a guy where you're getting him at a good cost. I think that he can finish top 20 easily. And like Bob said, it's pretty cloudy for the early down hammers. So whether it's Perine, Fat Rob, or Adrian Peterson, which I'm going to stay away from all those players. It's a DFS show, so that we may or may not have interest week to week. But Chris Thompson in season-long formats, I've been all over him. I did something on Road to Underworld about him. I see, when I look at Chris Thompson from a shiftiness perspective, I see some Dion Lewis. Similar in weight, Dion Lewis is a grinder in between the tackles. Chris Thompson is not that back. But where I like to draft wide receivers early, Thompson fits the mold for the running backs that land on most of my rosters.
Bob, I just pulled up the MFL 10 ADP for the receivers on this team. The highest receiver being taken right now is Jamison Crowder, just outside the wide receiver 3 range. Then we go down the wide receiver 5 range, Josh Doxson, just behind him, Paul Richardson. It looks like it doesn't cost much to get any of these guys, but which one are you taking here?
Yeah, I'll take the freebie flyer on Doxson, especially in standard leagues. Jay Gruden said this offseason, or just his camp was opening, they're going to spread the ball out around a lot. So don't expect Josh Doctson to have big, reception and yardage totals, but expect him to be a huge factor in the red zone. I think ideally that's what we'd like. We saw flashes of it last season. And I think that's kind of what he is. So I think for a freebie, he's pretty damn good. I think the Redskins paid a hell of a lot of money for Paul Richardson. I'm not sure it was money well spent. We'll find out. I'm probably not spending a lot of draft capital to find out. Maybe, he's a late round flyer guy in some DFS or there's some best ball type situations at this point. But beyond that, I'm not that interested. I think Crowder is the clear-cut front runner, and Doctson is kind of the upside late round, almost freebie at this point.
And to piggyback on that, I would agree with Jamison Crowder, and I think you're not paying a ton. You draft running backs early. Give me some Jamison Crowder. He is Randall Cobb. He is Sterling Shepard, and he is a polished 25-year-old wide receiver in the NFL, and we like that. So his experience, I think the trade-off between Kirk Cousins and Alex Smith is somewhat of a wash. But outside Crowder, Doctson seems like one of these players we're just going to keep hearing about, and we're never going to really get to see what he is. So I am comfortable with Jamison Crowder. I think he's another wide receiver that can be top 25. You're getting him at a decent cost. He's probably 75 receptions, 900 yards. 6 or 7 touchdowns. So he's fine as a wide receiver 3 for me.
Bob, we've talked about Tyler Eifert being the value tight end just because of the injury risk is already so much baked into the cost. Do you see that same type of value here?
I do, and I love his commitment. He had bones removed from his toes to better stay on the field this year.
You can't break bones if you don't have them. Is that
right? Exactly. I like that move. Pro level move by him. A lot of commitment there, says Ronnie Lott. No, I do. I think you're getting a great price on him. Throw out some numbers from our friend Mike Clay. Reed handled 21% target share. That's 7.5 targets a game, and was fantasy's number 6 tight end during the 4 games he ran a route on at least half of the team's pass plays last season. More importantly, he was the top scorer at the position during those weeks in each of the last 2 years where he was used that heavily. So we know the upside's there. And it's easier for me, injury agnostic that I am, and fully willing to admit that sometimes that will bite me in the backside. You have to mitigate the risk by drafting either extra players or maybe a little earlier than you would on a backup tight end. I think there's plug and play threats available for both those guys in Vernon Davison for Tyler Eifert, Tyler Kroft, but that maybe forces you to go 3 deep at a onesie position, which is not always, depending on how deep the roster is, maybe that doesn't work for you, or how deep your bench is. So those are things to keep in mind. But yes, I think he's very good value right now still.
Justin, let me ask you, which one would you have? Would you have Jordan Reed or Tyler Eifert?
Oh, it's Jordan Reed, and it's not even close in my opinion. If we saw what Jordan Reed was capable of doing in 2015. He missed 2 games, 87 receptions, 950 yards, 11 TDs. Next to Rob Gronkowski that same year, this was a top 2 tight end performance of any tight end over the last 3 seasons that we've seen. So Alex Smith is now in Washington. He leaned on Travis Kelce for a while. Jordan Reed kind of slides in my eyes, as the new Travis Kelce, the blankie for Alex Smith. The biggest thing with Jordan Reed, as we all know, is the health. We're paying for his upside. It's, similar to Andrew Luck. We know what Andrew Luck is capable of being the top quarterback from a fantasy standpoint. Potentially, we're getting him at a discount. Same thing with Jordan Reed here. I agree with Bob. It's not even close.
Right. I would agree. I would rather have Reed, but you're paying a little more for him. It comes at a cheaper price.
Yep.
And some numbers on that as well. Look, he's missed a lot of games. He's been on the field for 39 of a possible 80. So we get it. He's not durable. But, in 2015, he missed 3 games, still led all tight ends in the NFL with 13 touchdowns, missed 8 games in 2016, still scored 5 touchdowns, ranked 7th at the position in fantasy points per game when he was on the field. So, look, it's a leap of faith. There's no doubt about it with I think more so with Eifert even than Reed, but I think both of them clearly bring those same concerns, and you just have to be prepared to deal with them.
You better carry another tight end or 2 if you're drafting both of those guys. If you're going to have Jordan Reed, you better have yourself a Charles Clay. you better have yourself another tight end because these guys can go down. But you're not paying the couple years ago, you were paying a Jordan Reed premium.
Look, you got a guy that's maybe a top 3 tight end if he's playing at his highly productive level over the course of a season. So
no question.
Yep, there's upside to go with that risk.
All right, you mentioned discounts, and I want to bring up a discount that I find really interesting is the Alex Smith regression discount, because last year he crushed, and there's almost no doubt that he can't repeat that exact performance. But right now, QB 18 on MFL 10s, is he a good late-round QB target, Justin?
I would say that he is, and I think that the three of us know what Alex Smith is. I mean, he's conservative, but like Bob has said, every time we talk about Patrick Mahomes, I mean, Patrick Mahomes is probably good because the season that Alex Smith had last season, over 4,000 yards, it was a season of his career. I mean, first overall pick in 05, had the longest leash we've ever seen in San Francisco. Absolutely. Now, it's not weapons galore in Washington, but Alex Smith is going to spread the ball around. I think, throw Chris Thompson into that conversation. You're comfortable with Alex Smith. He's not going to burn you. So there's no question about it. I'm comfortable with Alex Smith. Does not turn the ball over a ton. I'm with it.
And he likes to throw to his tight ends, and that includes a guy that he's played with in the past, Vernon Davis, if you do get in a bind with Reed. I mean, look, there's going to be some aggression. The Redskins think that he can throw deep. We saw it last year when he was clearly, felt a little bit of pressure from the arrival of Mahomes and the complaints that he was a bit of a game manager. I think one of the things here is I think the defense, that's going to be an issue for him. What do they need him to do? Without a rushing attack, maybe they need him to do a little more. And I think when he's been asked to do a little more, he's shown that he can.
All right, that will wrap us up in Washington. Moving on to Dallas. Justin, do you see a Dak Prescott bounce back here? 2 years ago, he was a rookie phenom, and last year, much more of a dud. What do you see this season, 2018?
I think it's a run-oriented football team. I see a lot of Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, you tell me. They go out, they draft Michael Gallup, round 3 out of Colorado State. I think he could be the best wide receiver in this class, in my opinion. And then they grab Allen Hurns, and you have a poor man's Julian Edelman and Cole Beasley. It's a mess. Out goes Jason Witten and Des Bryant. I mean, what are your expectations for Dak Prescott? I think he's a solid NFL quarterback. I don't think there's a ton of talent around him. I think we know what the identity of the Dallas Cowboys offense is, and that's Ezekiel Elliott. So am I drooling over Dak Prescott? Absolutely not. But, similar to Alex Smith, he's not going to kill you. Somewhat of a game manager is Dak Prescott. As a fan, I like to watch Dak Prescott. I think he's a comfortable quarterback. Of course, he's a leader. He's the captain of the Dallas Cowboys. But you're not drooling over Dak Prescott in fantasy circles by any means, and that's primarily because of the talent surrounding him.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And by the way, at this point, until further notice, Julian Edelman is a poor man's Julian Edelman, based on what I've seen so far this summer. But that notwithstanding, yeah, it's not. Look, maybe someone could emerge on this receiving core. Maybe it is Michael Gallup. Maybe it's Allen Hurns. Who knows? Probably won't be Terrence Williams. He will be too busy blocking downfield for Ezekiel Elliott, which is why he's probably still a Cowboy, is because he is a willing and capable downfield blocker. And I don't have high expectations for any of those guys, nor do I have high expectations for Dak.
Okay, so it seems like the passing game here, probably a no-go. The running game, on the other hand, Ezekiel Elliott could lead the league in rushing yards, rushing attempts. The question I have, at least, is this offensive line is starting to break down before the season has even started. Justin, does that have you concerned? Do you see this pushing him back to the end of the first tier of running backs?
No. I think any way you carve it, Ezekiel Elliott is a top 5 running back in the NFL. I mean, he missed a number of games last season. They just fed him the ball. Again, Ezekiel Elliott is the identity of the Dallas Cowboys offense. I think we're going to see him more involved in the passing game. And like Todd Gurley a couple of years ago, we loved Todd Gurley. Not a lot of talent around Todd Gurley. We loved him based on his talent and the amount that he was going to touch the football. And tonight, any way you slice it, I mean, you could make an argument for Zeke Elliott first overall in drafts. I would have no quarrels about that. But is the O-line a little bit of a concern? We've been accustomed to a damn good Cowboys offensive line. There's some injuries, but like Bob says, offensive lines matter. So I'd like to hear his take on Zeke. But I think tonight, Zeke is a top 5 running back any way you carve it.
I would still agree with that. Look, I do think, it's never good when you lose the all-pro anchor of your offensive line. And Travis Frederick will maybe find out next week how long he's going to be gone. Maybe they place him on IR and, he's out at least the first half of the season. And I was talking to Skylar Dixon, the Cowboys beat writer for the Associated Press yesterday, and something he pointed out, there can be a trickle down when the guy, especially a guy that good, who calls your line signals and is an integral part of that aspect of the offensive line play as well. I think the other guys, Zach Martin, sounds like he's back at practice. Lyle Collins seems to be fine. So I think in general, look, Joe Looney is never going to be mistaken for Travis Frederick, but in Arizona, are we backing off David Johnson when they lost Shipley, the center there? No. Mm-hmm. Is it because he's not as good of a center? Is it because the offensive line in general is not as good? Well, look, if the whole offensive line's not as good and we're not backing off David Johnson, I'm certainly not backing off Zach. What I'm hoping for, or Zeke, I'm hoping that somebody else in my leagues when I'm drafting is going, wow, that offensive line, he can't do a damn thing. I'm passing on him, and leaves me a much better value for Zeke if I'm drafting later in my first round.
All right, Justin, bring us home. Take us out of Dallas, please, God. Are there any receivers you want here?
I think I have to have some interest in Michael Gallup. PFF had him as the highest graded wide receiver in this class. So I think if you're going to be conservative, we know what Cole Beasley is. He's that shifty slot receiver that's probably going to have 50 receptions, 600 yards, and 4 or 5 touchdowns. Sounds like a tight end in the sea of mediocrity. And, Allen Hurns, we're going to hang on to that season that he had in 2015 with the Jaguars when he had over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. But one thing is that we do know that's a fact is 219 targets are removed when you take Jason Witten and Dez Bryant out of the equation. So somebody's got to get the football. And for me, it's Gallup. I'm gravitating towards sexy there. Again, conservative, Beasley, and not a ton of interest in Allen Hurns.
Yeah, look, to me, Hurns is a guy that can play big slot. He can play outside. He gives him a little more versatility. That doesn't mean I'm excited or enthused about him any more than I'm excited or enthused about any of those other guys. I will take the poor man's Julian Edelman himself before I take the other poor man's Julian Edelman and Cole Beasley. I'm not that interested. And by the way, at tight end, this actually lowers the level of, or raises the level of mediocrity to sea of mediocrity. Mm-hmm. But watch for Jarwin Blake, maybe, or Blake Jarwin, I'm sorry, to be the guy who comes on a little bit as a pass catcher of that group, and maybe turns into like a DFS guy that we'll be interested in as the season goes, depending on matchup.
Real quick, Kyle. I mean, when you look at a guy like Jason Witten sails off into the sunset, similar to Antonio Gates, I mean, it's like you don't know what you have until it's gone, and I think the Cowboys are going to realize that without Jason Witten.
All right, we head north to New York. Bob, let me start with you. Can Saquon Barkley finish as the top scoring running back? Because I think it's already set in stone that he's the number one locked in 101 in Dynasty and the first rookie off the boards in redraft. But does he have the ceiling of the players getting drafted just above him?
Sure. I think he does. I mean, I think, again, opportunities are the thing we're looking for. I'm not sure Wayne Gallman is maybe climbing ahead of Jonathan Stewart, but I don't think he's climbing into the cutting into Saquon Barkley workload range. So, and I've mentioned this before, but you look at what Pat Shurmur did with Dalvin Cook in Minnesota before the injury. Heavy usage was what he had, and then maybe part of that was because Latavius Murray was coming off the ankle injury and wasn't ready to go full speed. Whatever it was, there was no hesitation to make heavy use of a rookie running back. I don't think you invest that kind of draft capital in a rookie running back unless you plan to use him. We all know he's a very capable pass catcher. The concern is, half that offensive line, the right side, is a worry. The left side, they shored up a little bit, and maybe that can help out in terms of giving Eli a little more time and flexibility to get the ball out to his targets, including Saquon Barkley, who, I mean, the Giants, maybe that's had something to do with injuries as well last year, but the Giants heavily targeted running backs. We've got a new offense in right now, so I don't know that that's really a big factor or something that we should pay heavy attention to, but we should pay attention to Barkley, the draft capital expended on Barkley. It tells us a lot about what they plan to do with him.
Justin, where's Barkley fall in your ranking?
I think you have to put him at 5 or 6 at this point in time. Gurley, Bell, Zeke, DJ, and then it's Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley for me at this point. It's one of these. I haven't been this confident about a rookie running back. I mean, probably since Todd Gurley.
Since Zeke?
Since Zeke, I was kind of off Zeke and freezing cold takes. Ridiculed me on Twitter, and I got absolutely roasted. But Barkley is a very special running back. The offensive line is beefed up. Nate Solder. They drafted Will Hernandez round 2.
Yeah, one side of the offensive line.
Right. But there's balance. I think there's going to be some balance. We talk about the weapons, and we will talk more about the weapons as the show goes on. But Barkley is going to get, you talked about Shermer, Saquon Barkley is going to get the ball 300 times, and that is very, very exciting. If he stays healthy, he could easily be a top 5 fantasy running back. He is 230 pounds. I mean, he's heavier than all these running backs that we talk about every week. He's heavier than Zeke. He's heavier than Todd Gurley. He's heavier than Lev, DJ, Kareem Hunt, Melvin Gordon, and he's just about as heavy as Leonard Fournette, but he's certainly shiftier than Leonard Fournette. So absolutely, Kyle, and there's no doubt in my mind Saquon Barkley can be a top 5 fantasy running back.
All right, I'm going to make a change to the show sheet just a little bit. Bob, who do you think is more likely to finish as the top scoring player at their position, Odell Beckham or Saquon Barkley?
I would give a slight lean to Beckham, but I mean, it's honestly, it would not surprise me if either of them did it. But I'll go with Beckham. They just paid him a lot of money maybe they want to get some of that back out of him.
Justin, what's your take on that?
It's close, but I'll probably go Barkley. I think in the passing game, you have quite a bit of weapons for the Giants. I mean, Eli Manning by default turned Evan Ingram into a number 1 wide receiver, even though he's the tight end. You have a healthy Sterling Shepard coming back. I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley. I mean, they're going to want the Giants want an identity on the ground. And I've said this before. We haven't seen a bona fide run game in New York since Tiki Barber, and that feels like forever ago. They keep swinging and missing. It didn't work out with Paul Perkins. I think Wayne Gallman will have a role, and he's a player that I would want to stash if I pay for Saquon Barkley. But it's Barkley for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, unless one of you guys have a scorching hot take, there's not much to say about Odell Beckham. Right now goes as the 3rd overall wide receiver just at the end of the first round. And if you guys don't have any scorching takes, I think the more interesting thing to talk about here is we've got maybe a contender for the number 1 overall running back, the same thing with receiver. How do you see this impacting the other receiving pieces, mainly Evan Ingram and Sterling Shepard? Bob?
I think, Evan Ingram's being drafted as last year's Evan Ingram. I don't think he'll be that again because you have some healthier options back. And Sterling Shepard, remember, he was beat up last year, played through an injured ankle, so he wasn't at full speed. And it was like Evan Ingram became the de facto wide receiver 1. He won't be asked to play that role again. Sometimes there is such a thing as addition by subtraction. In this case, though, the subtraction of targets won't help him, I don't think. And I think people are overdrafting him a little bit.
Justin?
I tend to agree. And real quick, with the Odell Beckham take, if you want a hot take, I mean, this is a guy that is a diva. He wants to play soccer. The hair's going everywhere. He's Hollywood all over him. So now my question about Odell Beckham is, does he have that fat cat syndrome that we've seen before? I mean, has the motivation lost? I don't know. He just seems like one of these guys where, and we've seen in the past, I think, when certain players have gotten paid, maybe the motivation slides a little bit. We know what Odell Beckham is capable of doing, but when Odell Beckham did these things, Evan Ingram wasn't on the team. Sterling Shepard wasn't as polished as a wide receiver as he's going to be. So it'll be interesting. And they didn't have a running back to the likes of Saquon Barkley. So to your question, for me, the wide receiver that comes I want Sterling Shepard on my fantasy team. I think he is Randall Cobb. The design was to play the Randall Cobb role under Ben McAdoo, and I think he has a rapport with Eli Manning. So I am hesitant, and I don't have a lot of Odell Beckham. We know what his ceiling is. I do have quite a bit of Sterling Shepard.
All right, I think that can wrap us up in New York. Actually, let me get, Bob, your take real quick, and Justin, you can have this as well. We are talking so much about the talent around here. How do you feel about Eli Manning? Is there any chance for resurgence, or is he just a streaming, maybe a guy we'll talk about in DFS?
Yeah, he's that cheap, what I think his current MFL 10 and ADP is 24, quarterback 24. If we think all these other guys are as fantastic as we claim they are, Eli Manning's going to be better than quarterback 24. That would be the bottom line here. And fortunately, you don't have to pay for that. So I do like that, especially if you go with maybe a higher upside guy that carries some risk. Perhaps Justin's favorite, Patrick Mahomes. Maybe you draft him early. And look, that extends out. Andrew Luck, I don't think we really know for sure that he's really Andrew Luck yet, right? But you're having to buy him as though he is, or at a reasonable price. Or if you grab a Carson Wentz, look, I hope he comes back and is cleared early on, but maybe he's not ready to start the season. Maybe Eli Manning could get you by for a few weeks, and I think you could do a lot worse than that.
Yeah,
especially absolutely. At the price.
Absolutely. I mean, PFF had him graded 28th last year, but we know what happened with there was no running game. Everybody was hurt, but there's no blocking. But I think a lot of times where I've gravitated towards Matt Ryan in recent years, it's not necessarily because Matt Ryan is Joe Montana. I gravitate towards the surrounding cast, and that's what'll happen with Eli Manning. This guy's won a couple Super Bowls. You're talking about a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL that he has. You're talking about a pretty damn good tight end that was drafted round 1 last year, a good slot guy, and now the Saquon Barkley. So why the hell wouldn't I draft Eli Manning late?
All right, I like it. And now we move on to Philadelphia, our last team of the summer road trip preview series. First off, I guess we can start with the breaking news we got today that Alshon Jeffery is expected to miss up to 2 to 3 games. Bob, how does this make you feel about the surrounding receiving pieces as well as the quarterbacks?
Look, I'm not sure that Alshon Jeffery was the make or break factor in that offense. Maybe we'll see more Dallas Goedert early on, more 2 tight end sets. We'll see heavy usage of Zach Ertz for sure. Maybe Nelson Aguilar can keep his role going that we saw him establish last year. Maybe it's a chance for Mike Wallace to get a little work in early in the season. Whatever the case, look, I don't think that Alshon Jeffery missing it makes it for me. Look, you look at the course of his career. I mean, he's great, maybe better in a standard league. He's never been a big PPR guy, so I guess my expectations are a little low for him. The fact that we don't know for sure when he's coming in, I've kind of taken him. I don't take anyone off my draft board. You see guys go extremely late in drafts. I think that's, can be very helpful. I'm just looking, I was in a draft this weekend and it seemed like he went at a point. Let me see if I can find him here. There he is. He went it was double digit rounds. So look, if it comes to a point where you're getting him basically for free, I'm okay with that. I'm not eager to target him. And it does make you wonder, when Carson Wentz gets back, how they're going to work things out. I think they have other bodies, whether it's running backs, there's multiple running backs who can catch the ball. They have multiple tight ends who can catch the ball, led by Zach Ertz. I still think there are enough bodies here to pull this off without Alshon Jeffery or without relying as heavily on him.
Yeah, I like that. Every player has their value. It's just that someone like Alshon might not reach that value in a draft often, if ever. But like you said, if he's going to cost you nothing, that's where you find the value.
Right. I say this all the time, but you want to be the guy that goes, you run towards these things. Don't run away from them. There comes a point where you are going, wow, this is if all of a sudden Alshon Jeffery is my wide receiver 4, well, then I'm maybe a little bit interested, right? If I'm not starting him every week and he's a guy that I can just have on hand, and if I need him, he can show up and maybe give me some of those multi-score games or something on occasion, I'm cool with that. But not like forcing him into my lineup or as a starter at this point. It's no sense drafting him like that.
Who is Alshon Jeffery? We're clinging on to the Chicago. He performed well a season or 2 in Chicago, and I think we had these high expectations when he played with Brandon Marshall, another guy that's constantly hurt. And by the end of 2017, his numbers were very similar with Nelson Aguilar. And I'm obviously now Nelson Aguilar's stock is higher, but a couple months ago, there was a lot of buzz about Alshon Jeffery. I think the 3 of us know that Zach Ertz is the focal point of that passing game.
Yeah, I talked to, Teron Davenport, he's covering the Titans now for ESPN, but I talked to him earlier this year during OTAs. He was still covering the Eagles for USA Today, and he talked all about how, the game plan, the Zach Ertz, the scheming is all directed at Zach Ertz. And maybe that's because we didn't know at the time where Jeffrey was at in his return. And so we heard that and we thought, wow, that seems odd that he could be an even bigger factor as a scoring threat than we'd seen before. And so I pressed Teron on that a little bit. He said, look, the way they're scheming, the way they're putting in packages, the mismatches they're trying to create from the places they're running them out of, it looks like they were really putting a heavy emphasis on Zach Ertz, an even heavier emphasis than we saw last year, which was pretty heavy. So this kind of explains some of that as well.
Yeah, and I was on. I think you want to get ahead of the play. Like I've been on Zach Ertz for years, and I think Zach Ertz to see a mediocrity. He's not a guy that's had Rob Gronkowski numbers or even I don't know Travis Kelce numbers or vintage Jimmy Graham numbers. I mean, he's a 75 reception player, 900 yards and 5 or 6 touchdowns, and now you're paying a Zach Ertz premium. He missed his time. A lot of his numbers have came at the ass end of seasons, so they're kind of padded. Now, granted, I'm on team Zach Ertz. I just think the hype is there, and I'm moving on from him at his cost.
All right, I like it. I definitely think you guys read the show sheet, because that's one of the things is really, we know he's good. There's no doubt about him being talented. Everything comes down to value. That's what we're playing the game for. And that's the question I have for you guys is, where's the value in this backfield? Jay or wait for the sleeper in Corey Clement? Go ahead, Bob.
By the way, I think I'm probably waiting later. If I miss out on Gronk and Kelce, I'm letting somebody else go with Ertz, and I'm going a little later on tight end. But that's, just to be on point about that. The value in the backfield is difficult to say because, we know they're going to share the workload with, we're going to see Jay Ajayi, we're going to see Corey Clement, we're going to see some Darren Sproles. I think those are the three right now that I would expect to see, barring injuries. And it's going to be hard to divine that in advance. It's kind of a semi, it's not a full-on New England Patriots Gordian knot situation that will be impossible to untie. But I think it makes it hard. What it does is it makes it hard to draft Jay Ajayi for me at his current ADP. I'd like to see it drop a little bit, but it hasn't. So the value there for me is maybe Corey Clement, and in best ball, I might have a little Darren Sproles.
He doesn't want to go away, Darren Sproles, not you, Bob. But look, Jay
I don't want to go away either.
No, I don't either. We gotta act accordingly here. Jay Ajayi's dealing with some injuries. I think the hope is that we see the Jay Ajayi we saw in Miami in 2016, 260 carries, over 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. But that being said, there was a lot of love in Philadelphia for Corey Clement. I hope it's not this Philadelphia cloudy ground game scenario where, we're going to see Darren Sproles, which is good as fans. We don't want to see Darren Sproles go away. But, a few weeks ago, Jay Ajayi screamed value, real value, and, a volume runner. When I think Jay Ajayi, I start to think about Lamar Miller, 25-year-olds. Ironically, they both played in Miami and had some success in Miami. But, your Jay Ajayi's dinged, and we're heading near week 1, gentlemen. So I think that, from a value standpoint, Corey Clement, 5'10", 220, 23 years old. They like this kid in Philadelphia. So if Jay Ajayi is not ready to go, I think we could see some Corey Clement.
All right, Bob, what are you doing in your fantasy drafts with the quarterback situation? It looks like maybe a push on whether Wentz starts this first week or not. You did say that the Alshon Jeffery news is a huge impact because we know that's not who they're running their offense. But still, what are you doing here with Foles Carson Wentz?
Well, I'm avoiding Nick Foles, and I'm drafting Carson Wentz if he drops, right? I mean, that's, and this is, again, one of those situations where value gets created. And some, I've seen him go much later with the uncertainty. And I'm okay with that because I can cover for that with my draft. I can get an Eli Manning. I can get an Alex Smith. I can get a Phillip Rivers or a Matthew Stafford even. And just park Wentz on the bench until he shows up. And look, we can do that. I'll get off on my high horse here about the balance within our rosters, not just, between positions, but within the position groups. Look, if I know Carson Wentz isn't going to be ready for a month, maybe he's not his old self until, 6 weeks, 8 weeks into the season. I need to have somebody who can cover me at that point. So maybe I draft Wentz a little early and I go for my second quarterback a little earlier than I otherwise would have. And maybe I secure a Phillip Rivers or a guy that I feel comfortable with, maybe a Matt Ryan, without overpaying, but, kind of drafting them in the natural spot. And you can do that with running backs. You can do, Mark Ingram's out the first month of the season, right? Well, maybe that's why I draft Chris Carson at a reasonable price right now, because probably he's going to start that first month, or at least he gets the first chance. Peyton Barber in Tampa Bay, draft a guy like that who can carry you. And so I think it's the same situation with at quarterback with Carson Wentz. We've seen what the upside is. Doug Peterson seems to scheme for him quite well, and I would like to have a piece of that if the price is right.
Similar to Deshaun Watson, you're paying a Carson Wentz premium. And now we're talking about Jay Ajayi's dinged up. So is there going to be a run game, a solidified running game? Is Alshon Jeffery, the 6'3" wide receiver veteran, going to be healthy? We're going to have to lean on the Mike Wallaces. So you're not getting Carson Wentz like you got him a couple years ago. I love Carson Wentz, the quarterback. I don't know that I want to pay the Carson Wentz premium. He is a testament of what I tout on this show. And being one of these quarterbacks, he was thrown into the flames, played 60 games his rookie season, and the highs and lows, we all saw it. And then in just 13 games last season, he doubled what he did and cut his interceptions in half. So we like Carson Wentz as fans, but you take out Alshon Jeffery, some uncertainty with the ground game and Jay Ajayi, a 67-year-old Darren Sproles, an unproven Corey Clement, and a somewhat always ding Zach Ertz, and a Nelson Aguilar, who we really don't know. They could be decimated by injury from an offensive standpoint. We know they have a good offensive line, so that's great, but it's not the New Orleans Saints or Patriots offense when you look at it.
All right, Bob, I'll give you the last word on the Philadelphia Eagles and the last word on our divisional roadshow. Do you have any best ball interest in Mike Wallace or even Dallas Goedert?
Sure. I think, more so in Wallace, because I think that's kind of been his jam either way, right? So yeah, and especially with Alshon Jeffery out early, I think that gives him a chance. And, I was kind of, wondering how Matt Collins would, handle maybe a little increased opportunity with Jeffries out. Haven't heard much about him, so I'm guessing it will be Wallace. So the investments that I've made there, I'm pretty confident in. And I think Goddard's a guy that I'm not as certain about. Sounds like he'll have a role. We saw Trey Burton as that second tight end was pretty busy. We just heard Jimmy Kempski from the Philly Voice today saying expect more 2 tight end sets with Jeffrey out. So maybe he's a guy that's worth something. I think I might have like 1 share of him in all my best balls, just a total flyer. So that's kind of what he is to me. He's more of a flyer. Mike Wallace is a guy I think that I'd rather rely on if I had to pick one.
All right, that can bring this episode to a close. Also bring our divisional preview roadshow to a close next week. Next week is the week before football. We'll be previewing week 1 of DFS. Make sure you follow all of us on Twitter to stay up to date with your Diehards pod news. If you want to find Bob, find him at Football Diehard. Justin is at Justin Lonero, and myself at FF Kyle the Kid. Thanks for tuning in.